Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome at our 9th Microfinance Lunch Break. These days, Belgium is welcoming 2 Americans with a message. Yesterday, our guest speaker, Mr. Waterfield, he visited Waregem too, but not by helicopter. Actually, he followed the cycling tour dwars door Vlaanderen, and I'm sure that he regrets that he wasn't allowed to participate at this. But before I give the floor to Mr. Waterfield, I would like to invite Mr. Erik van Akker. He's the General Manager of Corporate Social Responsibility at the KBC Bank for the introduction of our guest speaker and the topic of today, responsible pricing. Thank you, Mr. van Akker.
Also from KBC, to you all, a very warm welcome in our premises. To introduce Mr. Waterfield, I would like to go back to the last Microfinance Lunch Break on interest rates. And the debate there was these interest rates, is it an abuse or is it a necessity or is it and? There was also the debate on quality. Is it the most important thing of microfinance? Is it about the quality, the things, the results? And do you look at sustainability of the financing business itself? There were remarks made by how do clients look at it and how do you look at it if you take a top-down approach. And so basically this is a discussion on bringing transparency in the industry. And if I look at it from a normal financing industry, we have, and certainly after the financial crisis, we have exactly the same discussion. It's the same sort of questions. So we meet. In the financial industry, you see that the question is raised, why are you here, what are you doing? And for KBC also, we started last year an exercise, sort of journey, to define what it is for us to be a sustainable and responsible company. And in that debate that took place last year, I think in August, I saw this man on the television, and it's Hassan Rouhani, it's the president of Iran. And what he said surprised me, with all respect for Iran and the man himself. But in the discussion on the nuclear talks, what did he say? He said, transparency is the basis for trust. Because in those debates, it was all about trusting each other. And so that notion of transparency came along. And in the same exercise last year, we asked our stakeholders, clients, NGOs, politicians, the people working for KBC also, if you look at KBC, if you want us to be a sustainable and responsible company, then what sort of topics are important to you? And here also you see that transparency, price, quality, that sort of topics rank high. They rank high and we still have some way to go. I'm not going to in all those details. Next week we'll publish a report to society, what we call the report to society, and there you can read detailed what our stakeholders say is important to them. So we continued the exercise and we came to these 5 building blocks. We said if we want to be a sustainable and responsible company as KBC, it's about these 5 building blocks we'll have to work on. And one of them, as you can see, again, you can read the details in the report to society, but transparency is one building block. If we want to go for long-term performance, if we want to build and rebuild trust, transparency is important. Crystal clear reporting, proactive relationships with the stakeholders, and also product transparency. So the question of Mr. Waterfield, how do we define responsible pricing, is very intriguing, not only for microfinance, but I think for finance and the financial industry as a whole. So we are very keen and we're all ears. So Mr. Waterfield, the floor is yours. Thank you.
It's really a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate you taking the time to come here and explore this topic with me. I won't give I mean, I've been around microfinance for 1 year short of 30 years. This is my 29th year working in microfinance, so I've sort of kind of know what's happening and want to try to share that with you about how the original vision of microfinance and how it's changed, the good changes over time, and the issues that are coming up that are causing some discussion and debate in the industry. So I started this organization about almost 6 years ago to focus on transparency. What prices are we charging? And now we're moving into a very important next step, as I'll get into, about what's a responsible price. I was invited to give a similar talk in Frankfurt last year, and I'm walking to the presentation, and I pass by a pub that has this nice sign, and it catches my attention, right? And then I look a little more closely, and it says free Wi-Fi. Great beer, great service all day. So I quickly put that into my presentation on transparent pricing because microfinance we're not the only ones that do this, that sort of hide, the market with something less than the real price, okay? So I'm gonna show you a lot about that. And here's what I really want to get through in the 30 minutes is there's 4 questions that we have not paid attention to or tried to avoid or ignore. What price are we really charging? Honestly, nobody really knew. We didn't do our own homework to determine that. And my organization has collected pricing data on loans in 32 countries, going to 50 million clients. So now we actually have real data, okay? So second point as well, what price do we tell the client? Do we tell them the full price, or do we tell them something different, and how close is that, right? And then we're gonna talk about how we've defined what a transparent price is, and then the harder question, and I'll tell you, I don't have any definitive answers on this, but we're working at trying to determine, discuss, debate what is a responsible price. And the reason I didn't push that at the beginning is because I really believe we need to understand 1, 2, and 3. How can you leap to conclusions about responsible pricing without intelligible and accurate data? Now we have that data, and it's very interesting. I'm going to show you some of that. But first, do we really have non-transparent pricing? Here's an example. I'm going to give it's sort of a simple example. It's exactly the same loan amount for exactly the same amount of time. That's easier. You're comparing apples with apples that way, and the same size apple, okay? So let's say you're a client, and you go and you shop, and the first place you stop, they say, oh, we don't even charge interest. We just have a 5% fee we take out at the beginning. You get $950, and you pay back $1,000. And none of this savings things, which I'll come to in a moment, all right? You go across the street, another institution saying, we charge 15% interest. They probably won't even say flat, and if they did, you wouldn't know really what that meant, okay? And a small fee, 2%, and none of that savings, okay? All right, which one of those? Well, I'm not done yet. I see another institution, MFI, and I go there, and the interest rate's lower, 12. The fee is lower, 1, and they say they will help me save. That 200 rupees or dollars go into a savings account, and I pay back the 1,000, and then I go home with $200 in my pocket. So they've helped me save. All right. And then the last one, I go in, they say, well, we charge you 36% interest, declining balance, and no fees and no savings. All right. I mean, you've got more financial background than any microfinance client. Which one would you pick? All right, how many would pick the first one, zero interest loan? How many would pick the second column? 15? I see no hands yet. Okay, which means one of two things. Okay, how about the third column? How about the last? Yeah, you know the trick I laid, okay? So you didn't do the math, you just are trying to guess my psychology, Yes, I know. Okay. All right, so now the client would ask, well, how much do I really have to pay back? That's called total cost of credit. $50, $50. Third one, it's only $33. And the last one that looked so expensive isn't actually as expensive. Total cost of credit, it's not a good indicator, okay? The more proper indicator is what we call an effective interest rate or an APR. And look at that, 48, 48, 48. And the last one that looked so expensive is by far the cheapest. That's why you don't find transparent prices in microfinance, because you look too expensive. Everyone else is hiding their price. You're trapped, I call it the downward spiral. You're sucked into also having to hide your price, because otherwise honesty looks expensive. Right? That's our dilemma. That's what we've got sucked into for the last 20 plus years. We calculate a transparency index. It just says, well, what do you tell the client as a ratio of what you really charge? And for example, if you say 12 and it's really 48, that's you're telling them 25% of the true cost. This one is fully honest. The right-hand column, 100% transparency. So we collect pricing data, calculate true price. We get all this information. We calculate this, and then we calculate the transparency index. So I'm going to show you real data here in just a moment, okay? That APR, you've all heard something about, when you go borrow money here in Belgium, the government is helping protect you. They're obligating the lender to tell you the effective interest rate or some number that represents the true price. We call it the APR, similar to what you're talking about. Here's what it really means. It's a unit rental cost. An APR of 30% means if you get $1 and keep that $1 for 1 year and pay it back, you'd pay 30 cents. That's a unit rental price. So it's not as abstract as maybe, as it seems. It really does work, especially when a loan is a variable amount of money for a variable amount of time. It's converting it into a unit rental price, so you can compare a loan of $1,000 for 3 months with a loan of $5,000 for 9 months. You can't look at total cost of credit. It doesn't help you. The unit rental price, yes, that's a way to compare. Okay, so now I'm gonna. This I have to say over and over and over and over and over and over to people inside the microfinance industry or anybody that's got a business degree, okay? I like to put all the data, say, okay, microfinance sector, throw in all the data, take an average. Microfinance is unique. Well, not unique, but it's different than standard finance. This curve down the bottom of our logo is critical. That's in our logo because it's so interesting and important, as you'll see in a moment. I'm going to move over now to our website and show you, real prices, okay? So here's mftransparency.org. And there's a lot of really interesting things, a lot of educational resources and software, but we're going to go straight to the pricing data, okay? And you come here, let's hope I'm still on the internet. Yes, I am, okay. And you can see the countries we've worked in, primarily, the majority in Africa, and, the biggest in India. We've got data on 48.7 million clients, 500 institutions in 29 countries. Okay, so let's pull up sort of a role model country. Cambodia is considered sort of a good, mature market that doesn't have a lot of suspicion, let's say, or has to defend their actions too much. So you come in here and you get some text, and then you get our magic graph. And here we're showing you the loan size, and here we're showing you the price. It's called full APR, and you can see the prices are in the 30s and 40%. Maybe that's higher than you thought. As you saw, it's higher than we say, but it's 30-something percent. And on small, now I don't see much of a curve here in Cambodia. The bigger loans, whatever that is, however big that is, are about 30-something percent, and the smaller loans tend to be, it's kind of flat. Again, that's an interesting thing. We don't see much of a curve in this country, but hold on, we will. Now, one other thing I want to point out, here's that transparency index. The prices are pretty transparent in Cambodia. Part of that is regulation. The government has banned flat interest, and the government has obligated that they tell the APR to the clients. So there's some of the temptation to mask your price has been outlawed. Okay, so you end up with a more interesting market like that. Okay, now let's pick another. We did a lot of work in Africa. Let's come down. Let's start with Uganda. So we'll pull up Uganda data and see what that looks like. Okay. Oh, there's more of a curve. Now, the size of these bubbles are how many clients. So the bigger institutions, the bigger products, with more clients, bigger bubble. And, there's a pretty big, well, you can also see who that is. That's Centenary Bank. That's their micro business loan, okay? This one up here is YSave, and that's BRAC, Uganda. And you can sort of see, I don't like to actually go for the highest ones, okay? But, you can see who they are. This is transparency. These organizations have voluntarily given my NGO their pricing data. We calculate it, and it's up there. You can go and look at this. Anyone in the world can go and see their pricing data now. So that's a big step for them. They think hard before they do it, okay? But the prices are higher, 50 to 100, 150, wow. Okay, and notice that these are lighter color. These are more transparent prices, and these are less transparent prices. In fact, let's come down here, and I just want to kind of show you some of the fun things you can do. You can customize this graph. Let's take the x-axis and make it the transparency index. And look at this. If the price is low, 30%, you're honest. You're telling the client, yeah, the price is, almost 30%. You're not hiding much of the price. As the price goes up to 75, you're telling the client 30, and the real price is 70, and your transparency index is down around in the 30s, right? So the higher the price, the more we mask and confuse the price. Pretty much everybody. Right? I mean, it's a pretty convincing pattern, okay? And in fact, even within a single institution, there's many I could show. Here, let's take opportunity. Look at this, all right? I'm laying the groundwork, giving you information to think about what's responsible. I know this will be a little harder to read. That Opportunity Uganda has, 20,000, I forget where the clients went, but they've got a lot of products, and let's come down here. They got about 20,000 clients, I think. No, I know you can't see this very well, but this Solidarity Group loan is flat. They tell the client 27% flat or 30% flat. And this one is a group loan, and they tell them 30% flat. And that one, and then if you're an individual loan, they say you 24% declining balance. Now, I haven't gone through the math, but I think most of you probably know flat is almost twice as expensive. So your client, you come in, you say, well, what prices? Well, this one's 24 and this one's 24, but this one's declining balance and this one's flat. In other words, that one's twice as expensive, but I'm not telling you it's twice as expensive. This happens. I mean, there's the evidence. We've got flat, declining, declining. And the bigger the loan size, generally, the bigger the loan size, we do declining balance, like a commercial bank would. And the smaller the loan size, we shift to flat, so the price doesn't look as high, but we're able to generate twice as much income. Again, we got sucked into that in many cases. It wasn't intentional from the beginning, but when others start to charge flat and their price looks less than yours, you kind of get pulled into it, right? Okay, so let's just take a look. So Uganda is sort of, I call those middling prices, around 50 to 100%. Let's go take a look at one more country. Tanzania is not the highest prices, but it's sort of it's an interesting data set. So let's pull up Tanzania, and let's see. Okay, there's 400,000 clients. 18 institutions gave us their data. Not everybody did. If you look here, a few declined, okay, and a few did not renew their data, update their data, but most did, okay. And what are the prices? Let's come out and look at the graph. Well, okay, there's 100%, and that's 200%. And there's a big institution, Pride, is charging about 134%. Now, again, a lot of the business school lessons we learned is when you get bigger, you get more efficient, and your prices can come down. This won't prove it, but all of our data, I've looked at scale correlation to efficiencies and scale correlation to prices, and there's no correlation. When you're given really small loans, those rules we learned in business school break down. This is really interesting. We've got to relearn. We've got to take the foundation of analytical principles we learned and adapt them, okay? Now, here's one other thing. I mean, that's just always loan size. The smaller the loan, the price tends to go up. Most of the clients in Tanzania look like they're getting loans under 1 million Tanzanian shillings. Let's look at this one. Let's look at loan term. Watch how fun this graph is, okay? Okay, so these loans are 6-month loans, and they're the price range. Look at that. There's really, if there were a competitive market, wouldn't you think the prices would be closer together? But look, we have prices from 20 to 200 for kind of the same loan amount and kind of the same loan term. There is no price competition when nobody knows the real price. That's why, for example, the European Union moves to transparent pricing, truth in lending, because that makes the market work more like a market. The Tanzania market, the clients don't know. They cannot shop and compare prices. They do not have the data or the education necessary to do so. Yeah. Now, here's an interesting, that's a 12-month loan. Okay, I'm going to talk in favor of money lenders, payday lenders right now. Why? Okay, watch this. This is a 12-month loan, and the interest rate you're paying is 110%. So you borrow $1,000 and keep it for those 12 months. You pay $1,100 in interest. Whew. Wow. And there are, if you can see that, there are 101,000 clients in Tanzania that are doing just that. Okay? So now we've got data. Now we can sort of say, well, should we be doing that? Is that responsible? The clients borrow it, the clients pay it, maybe the clients come back and take another loan, so maybe it's okay. But, we should actually think about it, right? Okay. So now here I'm going to talk in front of the money lenders. If I need to make my rent payment, let's say I need $200. My payday is in 2 weeks. So if I borrow $200 for 2 weeks, let's say I have to pay $20 to the money lender. That sounds expensive, 10% for 2 weeks. But it's better than losing my house, right? But if I borrow for 12 months, I'm willing to pay a high percentage on a very short-term loan. I get in big trouble if I borrow for a long period of time at a high percentage. So the price curve, small loans need to be more expensive, and short-term loans need to be more expensive. But a lot of microfinance loans are not short-term loans. So we got to think about that. We got to learn about it, right? Okay. So let me. I'll spend less than 60 seconds more on this before I move on to something else. You can click this button. This is again. I just want to pique your curiosity of what's on our website. You can go here again. You don't have to pay or anything. We're an NGO, and look at the data you can get. So here's the Tanzania data. Now I want to add another country. Let's add, let's add Ghana. Ghana prices are not very good. Okay, so here's some statistics, right? and there's about 500,000 clients in each country, and now I can't make sense of that. I come down here, and again, you have to poke around and kind of learn. This is a relatively new website. Well, now watch this. Let's change bubble color to country. Look at these nifty statistics. So there's Tanzania's blue and Ghana's orange, and there they are. And then we give you average prices for really small loans and larger loans. Kind of interesting, right? All sorts of data now. And then there's another thing down here, and I won't explain that right now, but you play with this graph. You come up here and you filter it, and you zoom in on the left-hand side, and you can learn more about what the prices are and try to figure out why. Yeah? Okay, so let's pause there. Now, I haven't shown you what an APR means and an EIR. Now, this is new. I made this up. I made this little sheet here this morning because I'm from the United States, and our formula that our government set is different than your formula. So I want to show how different that is, and the prices we're showing are actually lower than what you might think. Now, here's an example of what an APR is. You get 1,000, and you pay, let's say it's 12%. We just say, I'm going to loan you 1,000. You pay back the 1,000 in a year with 12% interest. So you pay back 1,120. Now, you do an internal rate of return. Don't worry, I'm not going to get any more detail on that. You do an internal rate of return. That's how these things work. And it becomes 12%. The U.S. formula would say that loan is 12%. The European formula would say it's 12%. Okay? Now they would say, okay, so what's the big deal? Watch this. If you say, I'm going to give you 1,000 and you pay interest, you keep the whole 1,000 for a year. I'm making a simple example. Keep the whole 1,000 for a year, but pay me a little of interest in 6 months, and the rest of the interest at the end, you're still paying me $120 in interest. So in the United States, we say, well, 6% every 6 months, let's annualize it. We take 6 times 2 is 12. Here we took, that was 1 period per year. But, there's a smarter formula, okay? And the European Union uses this. It's a compounding where you take 1.6 to the second power, yeah? And you get 12.3. So your banks here would have to tell you the true price of that loan was 12.3. Okay? Just a few percent. No tenths of a percent. No big deal. But, okay, let's try quarterly. Okay, so I say, well, you're going to pay me 30 every 3 months. So it's still, in the U.S., I take 3% for a quarter. I get 12. In the European Union, it's 12.5. Got a little bigger. And what if we do every month? $10 a month. It's 1% interest. U.S., it's 12%. Oops, sorry, I got to put a minus 10. Okay, and it's 12%, but here it's 12.7. Ooh. Okay, so you've seen this, right? I mean, you sort of see these, they say, well, we're charging you 12%, but the true price is 12.7. And you say, well, okay, whatever. It's not a big difference. This works with commercial bank loans that tend to be relatively low. But you just saw what we do in microfinance, all right? So we don't charge 1% a month. We charge 5% a month. So let's say $50 a month in interest. 5% a month would be $60. Our website, the default on our website is we show you a price of $60 for that MFI in Ghana or Kenya. The European formula would really be $80. You'd say, well, it's exactly the same loan, exactly the same math, but by your formula, it's $80. Ouch. 5% a month becomes $80. The gap here got much bigger. It's not just a few tenths of a percent. And, this you just saw. That's a pretty moderate price. We have prices over 100%. So what if I charge 10% a month? In the U.S. formula, our website as well, 120, European formula, 214. We charge 10% a month. Well, how much is that per year? 214. I don't get it. Don't worry, it's math. You can see where this goes, right? And we had prices even higher than that. The gap here gets bigger and it grows exponentially. If I charge you 200% a month, 240 or 800. And we do have MFIs and payday lenders charging at least 20% a month. So by your formula, you would see that as a price of 800% a year. So here's I went into this a little bit of detail because really, really, really important. When you ask for a number, find out what number you're getting told. That's exactly the same dates and exactly the same amounts, and depending on the formula of the person communicating to you, you can hear very different responses. Yeah? So it's tricky. Pricing, I really wish pricing were easier and simpler and clearer. You'd think, how much is a bottle of water? That's easy. What's the price of a loan? Not so easy, is it? Is it? It gets complicated. Okay, so let's now that I've shown you, some of us, many of us charge higher prices than you thought. Why? Now what is a responsible price? Why do we charge such high prices? Let's take a look. Okay, so here's one of the realities, and I've been very involved in this, is that we try to, and supportive. I'm not against profit, okay? Fast forward a little bit. I'm against too much profit, okay? I argue, we need sustainability. We need some profit, but how much profit is too much profit? That's the question I want us to talk about, okay? So here's the reality, cost curve, okay? Real simple math. You could show this to anybody you want, and they can get it, all right? Let's say I'm given a $500 loan, and everything I spend in the institution to give that loan is $50, and let's say it's a one-year loan. So I say, well, to loan out $500, over a year, I'd spend $50. My operating cost ratio is 10%. So I have to charge an interest rate that generates at least 10% just to cover the operating costs, right? But $500, that's kind of a big loan. I'd like to work with poorer people, smaller loan. Whoops. So let's try a $250 loan. I want to give the same quality service. I want to pay my staff the same fair salary, so I am going to spend $50. My operating cost ratio went up, doubled to 20%, so I have to raise my price. And there's many countries where $250 is a big loan. Philippines, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, $250 is a big loan. So we give a $100 loan. And I see where this is going. So I say, well, all right, I'm going to have to work faster, spend less time with those clients. I'm going to have to tell my staff I can't afford to pay them as much. They have to work harder for less money, but it's good. It's for a good cause. It's to help the poor. So I lower my cost to $30 per loan. I'm more efficient. But the efficiency indicator we use in business school says, no, you're not more efficient. And you plot that out. Big loan, smaller loan, you get a curve. That's the curve. That's the delivery cost curve. And we need, if we're going to be sustainable, not subsidize, we borrow money from some of you in the room, okay, at maybe 10%. And we hope we don't have too much loan loss, let's say 2%. And the reality of the operating costs, let's say it's 20, okay? And we build in hope for a little bit of profit, and then we loan it out at 35. Okay, that's business. And I'd say that's responsible business. That's okay, 3%, okay, right? Now, what if the loan size let's say that's the $1,000 loan, the $500 loan, operating cost ratio went up, and so I got to raise my price. Higher prices do not mean higher profits. It's black and white, right there. It's obvious. You cannot just, in microfinance, it's not high prices mean high profits, or high price is good in some case. It's where you are on the curve. The smaller the loan size, the harder it is. And we're trying to do our best job, but the costs go up, and then we have to raise the price, and even with the high price, we don't generate a high profit. In many cases, not even a profit. Here's the dilemma. What if we say, well, somebody else is charging 45% on a $500 loan. I'll charge 45% on a $1,000 loan, same price, but I make a lot more profit because I'm pricing off the curve. That's the reality that we live in, that few of us understood and few of us talk about. But now we are. Because some of us got really, really, really rich doing that. Okay? So this is data from the mix. It's audited financial statements, and each dot is for an institution in Bolivia, 23 institutions. The ones that tend to work with bigger loan sizes the red dots are operating cost ratio, are efficient. The ones that focus on average on the smaller loans are less efficient. You saw why. Okay? And so then the blue dots are the portfolio yield. This isn't real prices they're charging. That's the average portfolio yield for that institution. So the ones prices are not flat in Bolivia. They're pretty flat, but they tend to go up for those institutions trying to give the smallest loans. But the higher prices do not mean higher profits. The spread is remarkably constant. I call that a well-functioning market. What the institutions are doing is saying, this is how much it costs me, so that's going to be my price, so that I can cover my costs and maybe make a little bit of profit. If you're off the curve, that's where I say, let's talk. Why are you off the curve? You see what I mean? Yeah. So that's Bolivia, and it's kind of flat, and the operating cost ratios are efficient. This is Philippines. Wow. Okay. Lots smaller loan sizes, and they're less efficient. They're spending 40 cents to loan $1. They're spending 50 or 60 cents for every dollar they loan, and therefore they charge 10% more than that. And so the high prices don't necessarily mean high profits. It just means, wow, you're working on the difficult part of the curve, right? Okay, so what we need to do is, we have lots of data. The mix all of us have lots of data. We've been looking at it the wrong way. We need to look at it in the context of that not all microfinance is the same thing. It's very different. The Bolivian institutions give really large loans. I worked 3 years in Bolivia, 1988 to 1991. I gave the very first microcredit loan in Santa Cruz, Bolivia. I know Bolivia, right? And they're given big, lazy, I call them lazy loans. It's easy to give those big loans. It's a lot harder to give those really small loans, okay? Yeah, so that's the reality. So then, are you close to the curve? If not, why not? And what spread do you have, right? So, you can find a lot of definition information on our website. Now, we've moved from decades of opaqueness on pricing to 5 years or so of transparent pricing. We know a lot more about pricing now, right? We know what prices we're charging. We're learning more about the why. And again, there's good motives for pricing, and there's sort of market-based reasons for pricing. I'm not saying illegal at all. Okay. Now we can take that data and look more at responsible pricing. What price should we charge? We don't have a definition of that. We're just sadly, barely beginning the discussions about that. But they're not easy discussions. And as I said before, if we had those discussions too soon, without data, they would lead to jumping to emotional conclusions. So I'm advocating that we look at the data. We get not just we get as people across the spectrum, and we look at the data and we talk about it. Yeah, and so should we do this? How should we do this? Okay, let me argue the should. I believe with all my heart with this. It's an obligation. If we want to say we are social businesses, we have an obligation to talk about this and determine and define what social means and what responsible means. We don't work in perfect markets, far from perfect markets. The clients trust us. We work hard to try to convince them to trust us. then we need to make sure we're treating them fairly, right? There's no price competition. You saw it. It's just prices all over the map. The clients are the very poor, mostly women, the majority women. You know this, right? We hold the power. And that's good in a business world, but in a social business world, it means that power obligates us to work with responsibility, okay? And the temptation, not everybody comes in, talks about empowerment or impact or, or gender issues. It's just like, it's a new market. That's why I'm here. So the temptation for large profits of some has led to, what looks like, if we could define it, irresponsible practice, right? And that leads to, arguably again, client abuse. So we've got to talk about this, we've got to come to some definitions, we've come to draw some lines and say who's certified, who's really meets the criteria of this responsible practice, and who needs to change a few of their practices to come back into the fold, okay? Otherwise, microfinance really is blurred and loses its clarity with everything else that, the money lenders and all that went on for 3,000 years. We said we're different. It's our obligation to demonstrate and prove why and how we're different. Okay? All right, so the economic pyramid, we work with the bottom of the pyramid, nearly the bottom of the pyramid, right? That's a unique thing about our business. We focus on the bottom of the pyramid. Profits are going to the top of the pyramid. How much to still call yourself responsible? Those are questions that I'm passionately involved in. I don't have the answer, okay? I want us to talk about that, right? Okay, so here's a simple way to do this. I'm going to simplify it and close here, right? That, what does it cost you? And instead of charging what the market will bear, what we are doing, the market doesn't know what price we're charging. So what we're doing is we're saying, this is what it costs, this is how much profit we want to make, so that's the price we're going to charge. This is what happens, because there's no price competition. And then the question is, what price can the poor really afford? Guess what? We don't know the answer to that. We do not know. I don't know. I think we need to look into it. So 3 steps as we're moving toward, this is what I lay out as a plan forward. Let's look at the costs and let's look at the profit levels. We've got data. Let's study it. Then step 2, what prices are we really charging? Well, we can see that too. Step 3, let's try to figure out what factors influence a client's ability to pay. How much can they pay for how many months or years and have a net positive economic impact on their livelihood? We don't know the answer to that. It's not an easy question to answer. I know that, right? But we've got ways where we can explore that, at least in samplings or some study groups, and try to figure it out. Because, in my gut, I just feel that if a client is paying 150% annual rate year after year, and our clients stay with us for years, I don't quite figure out how that helps them a lot. Well, here's the easier way to say that. They'd be helped a lot better if we charged them 75% instead of 150%, right? A little bit more money would stay in their pockets. So these are the issues that we need to look at, right? Okay. Time for some quiz questions. Do we define and evaluate this from the institution's perspective? This is a challenge. This is a trick we've had. We've been sort of self-regulating. We've been saying, let us decide ourselves if we are being responsible instead of an independent outside party. This, it's kind of tricky, right? So as we move toward this, do we look from the institution's perspective or the client's? I'm going to go through this real quickly here. Institution, when we say what price is a responsible price? If you are a client, I try to almost always look from the perspective of the client. That's what we do on our website. The client doesn't say responsible. The client says, well, what's fair to me? Right? So how can we figure out? How can we help know what a client thinks is a fair price? Okay? Then as we set our prices, do we set a global price or product level price or client level price? I'm going to get to that one in just a moment. Oh, the client doesn't care about that. The client just says, what's the price of my loan that I'm paying, right? And that's what our website shows, okay? There's a bias on our side to consider our income. The price we set, we're mostly focused on our income, but we have an obligation to consider how much of that really is what the client's paying and can afford to pay, right? And is it really, is it even possible to treat each client fairly? I'm going to give you a quiz question here in a moment. The client, makes an informed decision. Is that fair? These are not easy. You could see, right? These are not easy questions to answer. If you're running a new MFI, you're new, your costs are high, you hardly have any income, your costs are high. Is it fair to set a high price and hide that high price from your clients? What do you think? Because guess what? We do that. A lot of us do that. Should we? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe so. Okay, here's a hard one. Is it fair to make profit on my $2,000 loan so that I can subsidize the $200 loans I give? What do you think? Raise your hand. You think that's okay? Yeah, okay, so a fair number of hands go up. All right? And I'm kind of okay with that one, but if the market's competitive on those $2,000 loans, should I make profits off the small loans so I can compete on the $2,000 loans? How many think that's fair? Less hands, yeah. A few hands, right? But less hands, okay? Tricky, isn't it, right? And profit. What do you think let's talk about ROA, return on assets, not equity, so it's the smaller number ROA. How much do you think we should make is fair for a $5,000 loan? 2, 5, 10, 20, or no limit? Yeah, okay. Think about that. And then, so how much profit off a $5,000 loan is that you can defend and be, proud of? And what's the maximum profit off a $200 loan? Okay? In other words, how many of you would have a lower percentage on those really small loans because the money's coming out of poorer people's pockets? These are things that we need to discuss openly, because a lot of us think about these, but we don't really discuss them openly. Okay, so that's what we've looked at in this lunch break. Is we see a lot more about, you saw the prices, yeah, some of the prices. Go look at our website; it's full of prices. And then, what do we tell the clients? That information's there too. And should we be more honest about the pricing, right? And how the formula for a price, which one should we be using? I think we have fairly, within the industry, pretty good agreement on that. And then the last one, that's no answers on that one yet. What is a responsible price? Important. If microfinance is just a business, these are not important questions. The only important question is, are we breaking any laws? And are we managing risk properly? That's business school. But social business, these are questions. These are essential questions for those that want to argue we are a social, responsible business. Yeah? Okay, I like this quote because I'm a mathematician, right? We can't answer any of that without a sound understanding of mathematics, and Socrates kind of figured that out, 2,500 years ago. And a sound understanding of mathematics is necessary to understand ethics, right? Yeah. And one last quote. A Jewish theologian in the Vietnam War was talking about, the conflict of, should we or should we bomb villagers, all that kind of thing, right? Not microfinance, but this is an interesting perspective, again, on ethics. Just because I'm not involved directly, am I responsible? Only some are guilty in whatever social problem you're talking about. But all of us are responsible to try to do something, contribute and influence and change that. So that's what I'd like to leave you with is, as we move toward a definition of what's responsible behavior, don't say, well, I'm not doing anything bad, I'll let others worry about it. We need to engage, all of us, okay? So thank you for your time and attention. I'm sorry I went over a little bit on that one, but I think we've got a little bit of time for questions and answers. I'll let Kurt come back up. Thank you.
You can stay.
I stay up?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much Chuck, for this presentation. It's open now for questions. I would like to start with two questions that came via the internet that people asked, and it was these three questions were actually all to the same. It's about to what extent does transparency matter for poor people, given that most of them are illiterate and have fewer choices? It's all the question about can we communicate pricing strategy to people that are financially illiterate?
The second one, I missed that.
Yes, and how do we communicate our pricing strategy in a responsible way when we are serving poor people with very low literacy level?
Right. No. You saw the website, and I don't think a single micro entrepreneur in the world has been there, and if so, understood anything. Okay. Now, so this is in a layered approach. We didn't know what prices we were charging. The MFIs themselves many times didn't know what price they were charging. So educating ourselves is an advantage. We've learned a lot, and prices. Then we think harder about our prices as we set our prices. The clients still don't know the prices, right? So how does that happen? Here in Belgium, the government got involved and obligated banks to tell you the truth. Some countries, Cambodia, Bosnia, now the Philippines, and in India, a growing number of countries, Bolivia and Peru, there's an obligation to use an exact formula, and in the contract or at some point in time, you need to communicate to the client. Okay, so that's a great step, and my organization's working with regulators on that. Okay, so you got poor people with limited understanding of finance and percentages, okay? But the financial literacy training, this is the hope I hold, is that you as an MFI, all you have to do to tell the client, instead of saying, watch out for flat, and watch out for this, and think, instead of this big long list, it's this simple. Ask for the legal price, the APR, and lower is better. Lower is cheaper. Okay, that's all they need to know. Don't tell me, zero interest rate, tell me the APR. Remember back to our example, if I just went and said, tell me the APR, and then I got those four numbers, then lower is cheaper. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean clients, I want to defend myself here, I'm not saying everything's about low price. The client says, well, I like you, you're closer, you'll give me the loan this week instead of next month. It's a little more expensive, but it's worth it. They get pricing data that they can work into the decisions that they make. Right now, they get pricing data they can't understand. So that's again, what we in the industry, we're doing this, trying to get regulators to help us by passing those good kinds of laws. Transparency is a really good law and can help us, okay?
Yep. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I would like to give the floor to you for the next 10 minutes to have extra questions, and if you have a question, please raise your hand, and we have microphones so we can register a question too. Everybody can hear it. I propose that we take 3 questions now. Yes, thank you.
Hello, my name is Emmanuel Moyat. I'm the coordinator of the ACP EU Microfinance Program. Thanks, Chuck, for this wealth of information and some of the conclusions we already have. I just wonder about the type of actions you're saying that you're thinking about those, but we already know that there are things that need to be done. What about, what type of influence do you think you could have on responsible investment? We do all talk about responsibility, it's everywhere. So we have investors in the world of microfinance talking about responsible investors. They have responsible investing principles as well. So would that be some kind of criterion they could take into account? For instance, this institution is not responsibly pricing. So then also another question, you were talking about social business. Would you share, and would this be a way forward, would you share definitions saying that social business is no loss but no profit, and therefore that could be an indicator as well? A microfinance institution making a lot of profit is by definition not in the social business. So how would you reconcile your analysis, what you've found, with this definition? Would you push forward this definition of social business?
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
So there's already 2 questions, so I think you can start with that one.
Okay, very good. Okay. So all right, I knew all this stuff for decades, and I didn't start an organization because until it was almost like, until the damage was evident, right? So here's the deal. I started an organization with no money. I just said, hey, I know what's going on. And how did we get going? And how did we get all that data? How did those 500 institutions give us data? Because of the investors, okay? The social investors, mostly in Europe, mostly in the Belgium and Netherlands was the start. They gave us funding, okay, to go into a country. We'd go into a country and we'd get all the institutions together and we'd say, are you being honest about your pricing? No, but I'm not because they're not. And I say, well, okay, we're going to help you all be honest all at once, okay? And half of the institutions would give us data and the other half wouldn't, and then we would pick up the phone and call the funders, okay? And we said, you're funding them and they're not giving us the data. And they said, we'll take care of that. They helped us, okay? They funded us directly. They put pressure on the MFIs that you should be transparent, okay? Now, not all funders did that. The ones that put more emphasis on this, I won't give names because I'll leave some out, right? But some funders are doing that. Then the responsible investing principles have come along again in about 3.5 years ago, I think, somewhere around there. But investors are signing up for that. They're helping organizations like me and SPTF and the Mix get data. The investors, then have an opportunity and an obligation to use that data to make better decisions about who they fund. And they're doing it. They're using those are the people that use our website. Mostly are the investors, okay? Because they're using it to decide who they want to work with. So all that's moving in good direction. I talked about regulators. The MFIs, many of them want to do the right thing, but they don't know if their price is even competitive because they don't know anyone else's price. We publish Bolivia, and then they're the first ones looking. They say, wow, now I see where my price is. Now I can make better decisions. Investors funding Bolivia say, now I can make better decisions. Regulators can then make better laws. Everybody's thinking interest rate caps, so I'll go ahead and say it. Okay, we're all afraid of interest rate caps because it harms microfinance, okay? If the regulators understand the curve and understand what we're doing and why, and they're more inclined, I believe, and I see it in practice, to pass truth in lending laws instead of interest cap laws, okay? So these are the directions we're moving in to try to address. A little too late. We should have started 10 years ago. Yeah, but these are good steps, and there's a lot of interest and a lot of support to do exactly that. Right. Now the social business thing. Again, here's what I used to do. This used to be my job. I taught 3,000 people in microfinance, 3,200 people in microfinance, how to make business plans using my software. It's called Microfin. That's what I used to do. So I knew everybody, and they used my software to figure out their costs and to set their price. Yeah, and I knew what price they were charging. I taught them. I showed them how. And then I said, okay, enough's enough, right? So now here's what happened. I did that for 18 years. For the first 10 or 15 years, 10 or 12 years of that, none of us were making any profit. And we'd just say, social business is when you don't lose any money. Keep trying to be efficient and raise your price so that you don't lose any money. But guess what happened? We raised our price to not lose any money, and then some of us just kept raising our price. Then we said, well, social business, yeah, that means don't lose any money. That's break even. Oh, now we have profit. Well, how much profit can you make and still be a social business? No answer to that question. We have no answer to that question. Okay? I have a theory. I'll throw it out there, just to stimulate thought. I use a green light, yellow light, red light. I say up to 15% return on equity. If my retirement pension were earning 15%, I'd be really happy, wouldn't you? Okay? There's a lot of MFIs. Okay? And I'm saying if you're an MFI making profit off poor people, up to 15%, Chuck's happy. He gives you a green light. If you make 15 to 25% return on equity in 1 year off poor people with microcredit, I say, well, that's still okay, but it's yellow light. If you make more than, I don't know what KBC's return on equity is, but if it's more than 25%, it's like, well, hey, come on, how social is that? That sounds pretty darn commercial. And guess what? There's a lot of us in microfinance that year after year make more than 25%. Right? Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Waterfield, looking at the clock and thinking about I think with these three lights in mind, I would like to thank you for this presentation. If people still have some questions, we will have, of course, a lunch break, and there is a lunch involved, so you can certainly talk to Chuck directly because he's still around for a while. So I thank you very much for the presentation.
Can I say one?
Yes, of course.
Just one quick thing, right? Okay, I mean, because I want to put this in perspective, and then I'm trying to avoid the applause. Okay, no, yeah, I mean the obligatory applause. Now, percentages, right? Percentages and quantities, right? I started this because of Compartamos' IPO. It's a Mexican organization. April 2007, made $2 billion in profit off of an IPO, $2 billion US dollars, right? And a lot of us got concerned and questioned that, and a lot of initiatives of responsible investing started because that MF transparency started like that. They were making over 50% ROE year after year for 7 years in a row. But this really adds up to money. Right now, Compartamos makes $1 million US dollars a day in profit by loaning money and 99% of their clients are women. $1 million a day in profit, oh, that's kind of like, well, now we're talking real money, right? It's not just microfinance, that's real money. This is the thing, is microfinance has moved into real money, right? And we call ourselves social and responsible, but we're making a lot of profit off women with hidden prices. That to me seems worth articulating a little bit more. So that's why I'm here. That's why I work on this, to try to say, let's talk. Let's reach some consensus on what we're going to define, or let's just proudly say, we're not breaking any laws, leave us alone. So are we going to be social and define social, or are we just going to say, we're legal, leave us alone? Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure of making, after this extensive expose by Chuck, some closing remarks to this already 10th, and Kurt mentioned 9th, but it is already the 10th Microfinance Lunch Break, which today dealt with the teasing subject after transparency, how to define responsible pricing. And Chuck, an eminent specialist, as you could state, on microfinance and a global expert in product pricing, took us on a kind of microfinance journey, going from the original success over crisis and criticism towards transparency, and today heading for responsible pricing. In a way, an evolution from hiding prices towards the true price, enabled by this transparency and trying and leading to what we call responsible pricing. Indeed, microfinance, since its inception, followed a bumpy road. As a very experienced watcher and player in the world of microfinance, Mr. Waterfield gave us a bird's eye view on several key issues dealing with the use of transparent pricing data and using them to dialogue on the question of how to define this responsible pricing. This question, indeed, is paramount, and I would say the cornerstone for the future of a successful and sustainable microfinance industry, ultimately aiming at ending world poverty or putting poverty in the museum, as Muhammad Yunus once indicated. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very profound respect for you, Mr. Waterfield, and I encourage you in your kind of personal crusade for increasing transparency and responsible pricing in this wonderful world of microfinance. As Chuck did on a TED event in Phoenixville late last year and just repeated it here, I also would like to quote the German theologian Abraham Heschel: "Indifference to evil is worse than evil in itself. And in a free society, like we are in, few are guilty, but, as indicated, all are responsible. I'm sure, Chuck, you left us with a lot of thought for provoking ideas. Dear friends of the Microfinance Lunch Breaks, the aim of these events is, as you all know, to increase the awareness and the interest for the challenging world of both microfinance and microinsurance. And today, as indicated, we already went through the 10th edition, and as a lot of you can state, there is an ever-increasing interest for the subject. And as promised at the beginning, we will continue to alternate between, on the one hand, the subject of microfinance, and on the other hand, the subject of microinsurance. And I can inform you today that the next Microfinance Lunch Break is scheduled for Friday, October the 17th. We are very honored that Mr. Michael McCord, President of the Microinsurance Center, accepted our invitation to share his insights with us, dealing with another challenging subject: is there a business case and client value for microinsurance? So please save already the date for the 17th of October. So many thanks to Chuck for his clear and concise introduction today. Thanks to all of you for being here present in large numbers. This is a real encouragement for all those involved in these microfinance lunch breaks. And last but not least, many thanks to KBC for their hospitality and the opportunity to gather here in their premises today. Finally, I have the pleasure to invite you all to the walking lunch, which for sure will give you the opportunity to meet and greet and exchange experiences and ideas. Thank you very much.